I left the man I loved because loving him was making me smaller. I know how that sounds. It sounds like a line from a movie, something dramatic and a little over the top. But for me, it was the plain, simple truth. I met Carl in college, in a lecture hall that always smelled like old paper and stale coffee. We were architecture students, both obsessed with clean lines, impossible structures, and the idea of building something that would outlast us. We were that couple, the one everyone roots for. We studied together, pulled all-nighters fueled by energy drinks, and dreamed of the day we'd design skyscrapers side by side. Our dreams were so intertwined, I couldn't tell where mine ended and his began. After graduation, it felt like a storybook. We landed jobs at the same prestigious construction firm in the city. It was perfect. We were living our shared dream, building our future together, literally brick by brick. The first few years were a whirlwind of blueprints, site visits, and late-night celebrations over project wins. We were a team, a power couple in the making. But then, somewhere around the 5-year mark, I started to notice something strange. I was disappearing. Slowly, piece by piece, the parts of me that weren't us started to fade. Carl loved me, I never doubted that, but his love came with a set of unspoken rules, a blueprint for how our life should be, and he was the lead architect. He decided what was a practical career move, what was a sensible financial decision, and what my priorities should be. My passions outside of our shared field, my desire to take a pottery class, my dream of a solo trip to Japan, they were all deemed impractical. Distractions from the plan. When I tried to talk to him about it, to explain this feeling of being suffocated, he'd wrap his arms around me and tell me he was just being protective. He wanted the best for me, for us. And because I loved him, I believed him. I convinced myself that this feeling of being caged was just the price of a secure, loving relationship. I started asking for permission to be myself, phrasing my own desires as questions for his approval. Do you think it's a good idea if I would it be okay if I maybe? The person who once dreamed of building cities was now afraid to build her own life. The breaking point wasn't a big fight. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. I was presenting an innovative design concept in a team meeting, something I'd poured my heart into. Carl, my senior on the project, publicly dismissed it as too ambitious and unrealistic. He didn't do it to be cruel. In his mind, he was saving me from potential failure. But in that moment, seeing the condescending pity in his eyes, I realized he wasn't protecting me. He was limiting me. He wasn't seeing me. He was seeing a version of me that fit neatly into his world. The hardest part wasn't breaking up. The hardest part was choosing myself while my heart was still screaming his name. In the same week, I handed in my resignation and packed a bag. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed space. Space from him, space from the job, space from the life that was making me feel so incredibly small. I took a job at a smaller, boutique firm. My new boss, a woman named Alina, was a force of nature. During my interview, she looked at my portfolio and instead of seeing risks, she saw potential. She didn't just listen to my ideas. She challenged me to make them bolder. For the first time in years, I felt heard. I felt seen. I started breathing again, and I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath. From what I heard through mutual friends, Carl thought I'd moved on easily. He saw me thriving professionally and assumed I had just flipped a switch. He couldn't have been more wrong. Every night, I went home to an empty apartment that echoed with the ghost of our shared laughter. Moving on wasn't easy. It was excruciating. But it was also necessary. I was learning how to be a me without the we. Months later, fate, or maybe just the small world of architecture, brought us back together. A public park project, one we had idly sketched on a napkin during one of our first dates, was greenlit by the city. Our firms were chosen as collaborators. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Working together again was like walking on broken glass. We reopened wounds we had both pretended were healed. We were professional, polite. We called each other by our last names in meetings. But in the quiet moments, over blueprints and scale models, the old connection hummed beneath the surface. We were different, kinder, calmer, more cautious. But the feelings were still there, like a ghost limb. One night, after a grueling deadline, we were the last two in the office, and we just talked. Really talked, for the first time in years. No accusations, no defenses. Just raw, painful honesty. I told him how his love, for all its good intentions, had felt like a cage. He admitted he never truly listened, that he was so focused on building a perfect future that he forgot to check if I was happy in the present. We crossed a line that night. A stupid, desperate, human line. A kiss that tasted like regret and nostalgia. We both knew it didn't fix anything. In fact, it made everything messier. The next morning, the air was thick with what we'd done and what we couldn't undo. The pain I saw in his eyes, the pain I had caused by leaving and then by giving him a moment of false hope, was a heavy burden to carry. A few weeks later, he told me he was leaving. Not just the firm, but the country. He said he needed to figure out who he was without a blueprint, without a plan. He needed to get lost to find himself. The old me would have begged him to stay. I would have promised to wait. But the new me, the me who had fought so hard to find herself, understood. I just nodded and wished him well. Because I finally understood that true love isn't about holding on tighter. Sometimes, it's about loving someone enough to let them go. To give them the space to grow, even if it means they grow away from you. 2 years went by. 2 whole years of silence. I poured myself into my work, won an award for the park project, and even took that solo trip to Japan. I built a life that was entirely my own, on my own terms. I was happy, truly happy. Then, one random Tuesday, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Just coffee. No promises. It was Carl. I said yes. We met at a small cafe, far from all our old haunts. He looked different, the same kind eyes, but they were calmer now. He told me about his travels, the odd jobs he'd worked, the things he'd learned about himself when there was no one to impress. I told him about my successes, my failures, the pottery class I finally took. We weren't the same people who had broken each other's hearts. We were 2 new people, meeting for the first time. I don't know what will happen. Maybe it will just be coffee. Maybe it will be more. But what I do know is this: some love stories do you want have a neat and tidy ending. They don't just stop. Sometimes, they just pause, waiting until both people have learned how to love, without losing a single piece of themselves in the process.